Patch 14.4 has just dropped and there's only 3 weeks left of the set. So for those of you that want to get some last minute climbing done, here are the top 5 comps to help you do it. So let's get into it. First up we have the Pentakill Karthus comp. This comp has received at least one change in nearly every single patch, but it still manages to remain as one of the strongest comps of the set. The reason this comp is so strong right now is due to how flexible it is with both her headliner and the carries that you can use. You can use any Pentakill headliner such as Karthus, Viego and Maud, as well as the Executioner or Edgelord versions. There are 4 possible carries for the comp, 2 AD and 2 AP, making it playable regardless of the components you get dropped throughout the game. This should be very easy comp to play if you're new, as it works with lots of different headliners and you'll struggle not to hit at least one carry at level 8. Augments, there isn't any in particular that are a must pick for this comp, but I would be looking for anything that helps gain mana such as Infusion, or any that buys time for Karthus to ult such as Cybernetic Bulk and Martyr. Healing Orbs is also a standout augment in this comp, as Karthus is great at picking off weak units which will trigger the augment. Itemization should be very simple: build Shojin and any AP items that you can make onto Karthus, any tank items onto Maud or Nico, and then any AD items on either Viego or Akali, whichever one you manage to 2-star first. As I mentioned before, this comp is very flexible with its carries, so look to itemize whichever headliner and 4-cost unit you manage to 2-star, but make sure Karthus has a Shojin, else he won't be able to get his ability off and have an impact on the fight. For the early game, depending on whether you get dropped AP or AD items, you can look to place something like Olaf and Yasuo as an AD item holder, or Annie and Senna as your AP item holder. I usually look for Superfan, Pentakill or Edgelord starts, as they're fairly strong boars throughout the entire game, plus they make the transition to Pentakill at level 8 much smoother, as they use a lot of the units you'll be playing. Be on the lookout for any KOs too. If you manage to 2-star her early on, you can look at re-rolling to the 3-star her at level 6 and use her as the main carry. Going into the mid game, you want to look at building your Pentakill board ready for your roll down at level 8 for your final board. If you manage to 2-star Kayle without finding her as your headliner, it's at this point I'd scout the lobby to see if anyone else is playing Kayle, and if they're not, I'd sell my headliner and slow roll for Kayle 3. Otherwise, it's just a case of leveling up to 8 for your main roll down for Karthus, Viego and Akali. You should be leveling to 8 between 4-1 and 4-5, and then selling your headliner to roll down for a Pentakill headliner such as Viego, Karthus or Maud. You should be stable once you have 2-starred 2 of your 4-cost units, plus a 2-starred tank in Nico or Maud. From there, I'd econ back up to level 9 and cap out the board with either 7 Pentakill or 4 Executioner if you've got the Executioner version of Karthus. You can pivot from this comp into the KDA Ari comp pretty easily, as they both share the core Superfan units, and you can just swap out the Maud and Gnar for Kennen and Echo.
No one fights alone in the mist.
This next comp is one of the strongest 2-cost rerolls in the meta, and if you manage to find Senna early on, you're really going to struggle to lose rounds. With this comp, you slot in Superfan and any true damage units you can find to increase the damage of your Senna. Depending on the headliner version you get, you want to play either Caitlyn or Yasuo to activate the other trait. As this is a 2-cost reroll, you want to be slow rolling at level 6 to 3-star Senna, and you really only want to be committing to this comp if you naturally find 2 or 3 Sennas early on. For augments, you want any reroll related such as army building or heroic grab back, but outside of that, any strong combat related augments such as healing orbs or blistering strikes are great. The true damage specific augment is also very strong, and if you manage to find it with a headliner Senna, you'll most likely get a top 4 for free. Itemization should be Nashor's plus any AP items such as JG or Deathcap, then she'll gain a Shojin from Superfan. As her ability does a lot of AoE damage, you want to position her anywhere it can hit a lot of enemy units, so be sure to scout before each fight to place her in the best location. Your second itemization priority should be your main tank Echo, but try to spread out your other items as much as possible to activate the bling bonuses of each true damage unit. In the early game, you want either Superfan and or true damage units. As it's a 2-cost reroll comp, a lot of your core units can be picked up early on, and you should know very early whether you're committing to the comp. Really, if you find 1 or 2 Sennas early on, along with a BF sword or tier, you should look to go for this comp, but make sure to scout others to make sure you're not contested. In the mid game, you want to be leveling to 6 at 3-2 and slow rolling your gold over 50 to look for Sennas, making sure to put in either Yasuo or Sappheiros, depending on your headliner trait of your Senna. Once you have 6 or 7 Sennas, you should look to do a deep roll down to find the others before stabilizing and econing back up to 50. Going into the late game, you should be leveling up and slotting in any additional true damage units you can find along the way. As soon as you have enough gold to level up to 7 and have 30 gold left, you should do so, and then econ back up and do the same for level 8. Pivoting out of this comp isn't really an option, as in order for it to work you have to commit early on. That is why it's so important to scout the lobby at level 6 to make sure no one else is contesting you before committing.
A clever fox is never caught.
Before we get into this next comp, if you find these guys helpful and want to see more, then please consider liking and subscribing. I'm working on a lot of strategy specific guides for when set 11 drops, and I'll also be doing some videos for the PvE next week to showcase the new set. So with that out of the way, this next comp is my favourite 4-cost comp to climb with, as it's very simple to play, and you can play it regardless of what item components you get. It has both an AD and AP carry in Akali and Ahri. You play either 7 KDA 3 Spellweaver or 5 KDA 5 Spellweaver depending on the Ahri headliner you get, and then itemize Akali as your secondary carry to snipe the backline. For augments, you want any of the premium AP related augments such as Jeweled Lotus or Magic Wand, or some of the trait specific augments such as Raise the Tempo. Outside of those, any econ or tank related augments for your frontline will work well. New Recruit is also a good pick here, as it allows you to go 7 KDA and 5 Spellweaver at level 9, which is very strong and should easily top 4. Itemization, you want either Blue Buff or Shojin on Ahri, and then Nash's Tooth. As we're playing Superfan, Ahri will automatically get a death cap as long as you get her as your headliner, but you can go Akali or Nico KDA headliner, then find a third AP item for Ahri instead. You should then focus on itemizing your tanks with Magic Resist Shred and Anti-Heal. In the early game, look for a Superfan or Spellweaver start with a good AP item holder such as Annie. I prefer Annie headliner as this is a bit stronger than going for a Lilia or Kennen headliner, but as long as you have a decent mix of frontline and AP backline, it shouldn't matter too much. As this is a 4-cost carry comp, you want to follow the standard leveling pattern of hit and level 8 around 4-1 to 4-5, ensuring you make your interest thresholds whenever you can. Going into the mid game, you can either play 5 Spellweaver or 5 KDA board with Superfan. These boards will give you the easiest transition into your final board and will save you from any complex roll downs and getting dizzy at level 8. You've managed to find a few Seraphines at this stage, you also have the option of staying level 6 or 7 to slow roll and 3-star her as your main carry. This has a very high top 4 rate and is one of the strongest 2-cost rerolls currently played. Going into the late game, you want to be hitting level 8 around 4-2 to 4-5 and rolling down for an Ahri headliner or a KDA headliner like Akali or Nico. Once you hit, you should look to slot in either KDA or Spellweaver depending on the headliner version you get, that you have both 5 Spellweaver and 5 KDA activated, or 7 KDA and 3 Spellweaver. As the majority of your units are low cost, you should already have them 2-starred and be fairly stable to go to level 9. You can pivot from this comp to the Pentakill board if you manage to get a Karthus, Akali or Viego headliner on your level 8 rolldown and simply swap out Echo and Kennen for Gnar and Lord.
Quest accepted! Wait, where are we going?
Next we have the Bigshot Ezreal comp. This is my least favourite comp as I usually only play for top 4 and this is definitely a 1st or 8th comp. It's a standard 4-cost comp that looks to get to level 8 as soon as possible and find Ezreal or Zed as a headliner, then slot in accompanying traits plus Jazz to buff your whole team. Heartsteel has been nerfed multiple times to keep this comp in check, but it's still the best AD line to go with at level 8 and it has the highest ceiling in terms of capping out your board at level 9. Augments you want to look out for with this comp are any of the strong combat related ones such as Vampirism and Blistering Strikes, or any econ augments such as Escort Quest to allow you to hit level 8 as fast as possible. Frontline augments such as Crash Test Dummies are also great as it will allow you to be greedy with your frontline itemization in favour of AD items for Ezreal and Zed. For itemization, Ezreal really needs a mana generation item such as Blue Buff, then any other strong AD items such as Red Buff and Infinity Edge. You then want to prioritise any frontline unit that you can 2-star first, ensuring that you have at least 1 armor shred and 1 anti-healing item equipped on your board. The early game options are quite flexible. Corki or Jinx are great item holders for the early stages, and then you can put in any other frontline units such as Sentinels, Guardians or Bruisers. Heartsteel is by far the strongest start you can get as it will allow you to get additional econ and items as you level, as well as making an easy transition into Ezreal at level 8. You want to prioritise econ and health, so just play your strongest board whilst trying to make your interest thresholds so that you can get to level 8 as fast as possible, as this is usually a highly contested comp. Going into the mid game, some strong boards to play are either big shots or rapid fires with a strong front line. You should be aiming to hit level 7 around stage 3-5, and if managed to get a Heartsteel in for extra econ or loot, then this will really help at level 8 once you roll down for your main board. Going into the late game, you want to be leveling to 8 at around stages 4-1 or 4-5, and rolling for Ezreal and any 4 or 5 cost frontline units you can find. You ideally want the Bigshot version of Ezreal headliner, but don't pass on the Heartsteel one as it won't make a huge difference to your overall placement. Once you have your Ezreal and at least one frontline unit 2-starred and itemised, you can look to econ back up to level 9 and cap out your board. This comp has a very high ceiling as you can play a lot of 5-cost units, so leveling to 9 will be the key to getting higher placements. You can pivot from this comp if you see Caitlyn headliner on your level 8 rolldown and use Caitlyn as your main carry and Ez as your secondary carry. It will still most likely have a lower top 4 rate than the Ezreal comp, but it's good to go for when contested and have a weaker econ than the contesting players.
What is broken can be reforged.
And finally we have the 8-bit Riven reroll comp. This is a very strong comp that can really punish players with bad positioning, and if you manage to find an 8-bit emblem to hit 6 8-bit, then it has an insane average of a third with a 35% win rate. I've had a lot of success one-tricking this earlier in the set, which is why I created an in-depth one-trick guide, which I'll leave a link in the description below for you guys to check out. And that's it for this guide. I'm going to start streaming a couple of days a week on both Twitch and YouTube in the coming weeks, so if you want to come and say hi, then make sure to follow on Twitch and subscribe on YouTube so you can get notified when I go live, and I'll see you in the next one.